creepy.
So tonight on Into the Fray, I am talking to Robert Veach of Vparanormal. And you are out of the Chicago area, Robert, and now you are yourself an electrical and mechanical engineer, and you specialize in building extremely sensitive and high-tech gadgets that you and your team, Vparanormal, take out on investigations. But before we get into all that, why the paranormal? What got you into all this?
Good question. I don't know I've always been interested in the paranormal, even before they had a lot of the television shows. But I had a relative die, and this was about 6 years ago, and I had a camera at the holiday event, and I was taking pictures, and I saw this really unusual phenomena that was above my son's head, and I couldn't explain it. It wasn't in any picture right before and any picture after. So that just kind of triggered my interest, and then I started watching a lot of these television programs, and didn't like how they were using some of the equipment, and then I started getting ideas on my own. So I started taking equipment apart that I would buy and see how it worked, and then I would figure out ways to modify it, and eventually design my own equipment for our group.
So is that a lot of what you do then, is you, maybe once you have the basis for it, you can build upon it, but that first time that you have to break something down, is that a lot of what engineering is breaking something down to rebuild it and improve upon it?
Yeah, it is, because it's almost like you have to reverse engineer something to see what they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish. And sometimes you have original ideas. I have original ideas for the last probably 12 different things that I developed. But initially I was taking the equipment apart to see how it worked, and then I kind of built upon that and went forward that way. But now I have original ideas and develop it myself.
Now, I know you also have software engineers in your group as well, and I was watching one of your videos, and I was kind of cracking up because I like this about Vparanormal, is that Stephen and Dr. Walter, and Stephen is related to you, maybe a brother, you can explain that in a minute, but Stephen and Dr. Walter are the quote-unquote debunkers. I like that, right? Like, sometimes you need those folks around. They keep you on your toes, right?
Yeah, they're the two pain in the asses.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's my brother, and that's my father-in-law. And then I have another Stephen, who's my son, who was an investigator. But you're right, they keep you grounded, and they can be annoying, because they're kind of skeptical and want to debunk things. But, sometimes you could show something right in front of their faces, and they'll still debunk. but they are technical people, and everybody in the group's technical. I have a brother-in-law, Art, who's part of the group, and he is really good with people. He's a people person. He's also good with entities and asking the right kinds of questions. And then my son is a technical person also, an audio person. My brother is an audio mixing kind of engineer guy. My brother-in-law, Walter, is a person that has developed many unique things, and he's got many awards from the federal government for software and for programs and for hardware. So, we have a mixture, a good group of technical people that keeps us grounded, but it also keeps us looking forward to come up with other research devices.
So in all this research, and I don't know if Stephen or your father-in-law, Dr. Walter, did they go out on investigations and they haven't had any experiences themselves to get them out of that whole debunk realm for everything?
Yeah, they do go. It's my father-in-law is in California, so it's hard to have him go on local investigations.
Right.
But he's been out there a couple times. We've had him at Bachelor's Grove's, a famous place. And my other brother, Stephen, has been on a couple investigations locally here. And they enjoy being part of it and being like a debunker, which I want them for, really. But also they have an open mind, and they also have the technical background. Again, I could play an EVP that I'm a little excited about, and then I could play it to my brother, my father-in-law, or my son, and then they will kind of ground me and say, you know what, I think that was, somebody who was moving in their chair, and they might have said something, or they might have, made a breath a certain way, they're being fooled and everything. And my brother is an audio person, so he developed with me some of the techniques we use to really look at EVPs and to see if they're valid. And we bring special equipment along to validate some of this stuff. So it's kind of a mixture of a lot of different people that have technical backgrounds, and we then could really be really critique everything we get. So whenever we show something, it's been reviewed many times, and we throw out a lot of evidence that might be considered evidence, but it's not 100% valid in our minds.
Well, yeah, and you guys' stuff has been covered on major news stations, NBC, CBS, ABC, and you've been on a couple different shows, and we'll get into that too. And before we get off the subject of your team, has your son then had any incredible experiences that he can't explain, or is he still waiting for that day?
No, well, he did have a couple incredible experiences and a couple investigations, probably more than me, and he's more skeptical than I am. No, he's had things happen. We were at a place in Yorkville where we were based, and it was one of these commercial buildings that helps the elderly, and they have all these activities for them to do. And we went there twice, and there was one entity that they claimed was mimicking people speaking in their ear, and he was operating a special microphone I developed, and sure enough, the entity was mimicking what he was saying, and he captured that. And in that same building, he was the only person in the team to see a shadow moving across the floor in front of a locked door. And this was like 4 in the morning. And so he's experienced some really unique things, as well as I have too over the years.
That's interesting. Yeah, that'll get you. It's a locked door, and you're the only ones in the building, and there's a shadow moving on the other side.
Exactly. And then we ran out, and we tried to debunk it, and there was nothing there. There was no light, no cars. This is a private parking lot. And that's one of the things the clients had seen, as well as full-body apparitions. So for him to see that was good, because I saw his face change, and he literally jumped out of his seat, and he said, "Is there a cat here? Is there a cat walking around?" And he looked a little white, because he saw something that shouldn't have been there. So I was a little jealous that he saw that.
Right.
I wanted to see it.
You're like, no, there's just huge rats on the other side of that door.
Yeah, right. I hope not.
Yeah, that's a big one. Well, Robert, what about you? What are some of your most memorable experiences?
I've caught EVPs that are really creepy, and there's certain things weird about that. We're at an investigation with my brother-in-law, Art, and I had told him, I said, we got to be really serious here, because he had showed up a little late, and we had the owner of this building was right behind us, and we like to joke around. We get along really well. So I said, no joking around. We're going to ask some serious questions. We're in front of this creepy mirror that they said was something going on with it. And there's this American Indian term that means peace and something else. And the owner had told us about it. And my brother-in-law, out of the blue, started singing and chanting this really strange series of words. And I have no memory of it, and he has no memory of it. And when we came back to review the evidence, here was me talking about being serious, and him looking at this mirror, and him singing this chant. And when I looked up the words were, it was talking about a plant that was brought in by slaves, and it was talking about a term for a master slave. And these are words that I've never even heard before. Looked them up, and this mirror was a portal, theoretically, and this place had some slaves that were burned alive on a fire in one of those tunnels to connect them and hide them. That was really strange.
Those are words then that Art wouldn't have just come up with just out of the blue, right? Like he would have had to look that up and study it before he went into that location for that specific reason.
Right. He was not, he was not going to screw around right there. We were in there, and he doesn't even know those words, and they weren't even the words of the American Indian phrase. It was something totally different. And it was so bizarre that when I heard this, I thought it was an EVP.
Yeah.
And it would have been the clearest EVP anybody's ever recorded. And of course it was him, because I use a special microphone that tells me positional information. So I knew it was him, but I'm like, oh my God, why would he say this? And then he had no memory of it. And of course, I have no memory because I'm videotaping, and you see I've got no response to it. I'm just dead to the world. It's like I didn't even hear it.
That is really so strange. Weird. So, but it did sound like Art. Like you knew for a fact that was Art.
Oh yes, it was him, but it was singing.
Wow.
It was him. He wasn't talking. He was saying. It's so weird. I can remember. It was Emir Ake. He said that out of the blue. And Emir is the high level slave that takes care of the other slaves. And the other word is a fruit that was brought from Africa for slaves. And it's just, why would he say that?
And it did tie into the location. That is amazing.
Yes. Tied in 100%.
Oh, my gosh.
And the other thing, that was pretty weird. The other thing quickly I'll go into is when I was at that same place at York where my son saw the shadow and heard the mimicking voices, we came back, and about a week and a half after that, there was one entity there. And, I say entity kind of loosely because I'm a skeptic at heart, so I don't know if these things are all real at this point. I'm still evaluating everything. But there was an entity there that people claimed, and he was a mischievous kind of a person. And he was, like, in his late 80s when he died there. And I started seeing shadows in my home, and I've never experienced that in my entire life, ever. And I just kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to say anything to my wife. So I started seeing these things, and then out of the blue, she said to me, she said, I don't know what I saw last night, but for 2 nights I saw something moving across the wall. And I'm like, oh, God. I'm thinking, trying to tell her, So that was pretty creepy, and then they just disappeared. And I've never seen a shadow like that in my entire life. And the only other time I saw that was after that when I was on the set of Ghost Asylum, and I saw a shadow moving across a wall and across a window. But that's the only time in my entire life I've ever experienced that.
And at the Ghost Asylum location, were you guys asking it questions or taunting anything in any way?
Yeah, the one Tennessee Wraith Chaser, Chris, was taunting a little bit when a shadow appeared on one of the walls. The other shadow I saw was, I was outside with my wife, Judy, talking before the investigation, and I was looking at this big window, and I saw this dark mass quickly move across the window, and it was on the top floor, and nobody was even in the building at the time, and the building was empty. So, but that's my whole life. I've never seen that, and now I've experienced it a couple times now. So,
you've probably heard me mention this, but that's the only thing that I've ever seen is the shadow people or entities, or like you said, whatever you want to call them. We don't know what they are, but they're like, and I'm assuming this is what you saw in your home and at the location. They're like the deepest, darkest night. I mean, but darker, like the cutout from the blackest night you can find, and then they're still darker than that somehow. It's so strange.
Yes, very strange. Yes, and it's something different. The first time I saw it in my house, I thought a big moth had gotten in my bathroom and went in front of one of my nightlights and created a shadow.
Right.
But it was so dark and so quick moving. And then, of course, I jumped up and I went and got a bug zapper, and I spent the next 45 minutes trying to find this, what I thought was moth in my bathroom. I don't like bugs, but I couldn't find it. And then, of course, I saw it throughout the house where there was no light and nothing flying around. And it's just like you said, Shannon, it's the darkest of dark, and it's just very different looking. It's almost like somebody takes a dark felt material and is moving it across, and it's even darker than that. It's really something to see. It's something I hope.
Yeah, it's very hard to explain. That's the only way I can say it. You take a starless night, and it's black as can be, and it's still somehow blacker than that, even though you can't even really... it's hard to explain, but yeah.
It's like a portal where it's absorbing all light.
Exactly.
It's like, and then the skeptic on my team, my brother and Walter, they always roll their eyes and say, did you video record it? Did you capture it? And I always say to them, how are you going to record something that happens randomly?
Yeah. That's
happened to me 4 or 5 times in my entire life. And if you look at 6 years of me doing paranormal research, and if you look at 6 events like that, what am I going to have cameras going 24/7 following me around my whole life? It's impossible. And even with the camera, you're not going to necessarily capture it because we don't know what it's made out of. It's orb light. And I always talk about, there's a type of lightning that researchers have been talking about for, 50, 60 years. And they just speculated because they could never capture it. And about 4 or 5 years ago, they finally captured this type of lightning on video. So here's researchers, that are professionals, and they finally captured something that they knew existed for 50, 60 years. So that's the reason. It's impossible. Right. It's like the odds of catching it so slim.
Well, the whole joke with my last name, because it goes so well, is I'm always saying GoPro should sponsor me because I do have a GoPro. I don't use it nearly often enough. I need to up the ante on that, but it's GoPro Legro. So I think that, Robert, you and I should write to GoPro and say, hey, if you want to send us 1,000 SD cards and some GoPros, we'll wear them all the time and get the best footage we can, and GoPro will be all over it. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's
the problem is GoPro doesn't care about entities and stuff and shadows. They want people on surfboards.
The surfers with their dogs, I don't think my pug would like surfing. I don't think he'd be a big surfing kind of dog. He's not very athletic, so.
Yeah, pugs don't even like to be held usually. I remember I had a friend who had pugs, and he'd pick it up, and it's like they don't like it too much.
He's more like a cat sometimes. He likes to get, if he was allowed on the couch anymore, he had a little moment where he told Mom to, buzz off, I'm going to go wee on the couch right in front of you. Yeah, that happened. But before that, he would get on the couch, on the back of the couch, and sit behind our heads. And I'm like, you're not a cat, dude. Do you know this? Strangest thing. As far as the entity in your house, was that after a specific location that had that kind of activity, or why did that even follow you?
Yeah, it was after that location of that senior home in town.
Okay.
They'd gone there. And they reported shadow movements, things moving in the kitchen. We had one of the burners turn on its own on one of this commercial stoves. And the weird thing is that to turn this burner took so much force because it was one of these old commercial stoves. It was at that place that I came home and something followed me. Of course, I set up tons of equipment after that, and made the house look like a mess, driving my wife crazy. It didn't capture anything.
And then it was gone.
How it goes.
And then it left.
Gone. Yeah. It's like if it's Fray watching me setting up, saying, "Oh, look at this idiot," I'm not going to do anything now.
He's like, "Gotcha."
Yeah, I gotcha. I got you all excited.
Yeah.
Now you're not going to get anything.
But that must be so. How does your wife feel about all this? Is this something that she embraces, and she also goes out on these investigations? And is anyone in your family, sensitive or more heightened to this kind of thing?
In terms of sensitivity, I'm probably the most sensitive to anything happening, but my wife doesn't really like this too much. She's too much of a jumpy person. She's nervous about it. So when she saw those shadows, I was kind of freaking out myself. But, she's gone with me to support me on a couple of investigations. I've had her hold equipment, but she doesn't like to be involved and to ask questions. I don't think it's that she feels anything's going to follow her home. She's just a little shy, and she just doesn't feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
But I forced her a couple times. So she's on some of my videos asking questions and stuff like that. But
she's a
she's
trooper.
not into it like I am.
Yeah.
Like the shows on TV she's watching too, so.
Right. Well, as far as the whole mirror situation, and this is a little, just kind of a random question. I've read before about a Psychomantium, and I don't know if you are familiar with those or have been in one or have known people that have used one. I don't think that they're maybe very safe to be using, but, it's this little room with a chair, and you shut the door, and it's completely black and dark, and in front of you is a mirror. And I'm assuming it's sort of a divination ceremony that goes on in there, and maybe some meditation or something. But I'm just wondering what the whole tie-in with the mirror is. I guess just trapped energies and such with the mirrors.
Yeah, there's. It's interesting, the concept of mirrors. I mean, there was a pretty famous movie called Mirrors with Kiefer Sutherland that I made a little short movie about it, kind of joking about it on my channel. But when you think about a mirror and you think about something that reflects, it's reflecting photons that are hitting our bodies. Mm-hmm. Those photons go into a silver material, then they reflect back. So it is kind of unique that you do see a image of yourself kind of flipped around from the photons that are hitting it. I don't know whether there's something paranormal that could be beyond that. I kind of doubt it. I started experimenting with mirrors about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and I made a parabolic mirror in a device called the Parashadow, and it was brought to that Ghost Asylum shoot. And it was the same concept that you're talking about. It was a mirror that was 22 inches in diameter and a front silvered material that gets a vacuum put through it. And then what it does is it has a focal point. Very similar to a makeup mirror, where it has a focal point. Mm-hmm. And it magnifies light. Because the concept was that, if a mirror has something going on, let's magnify the light by focusing it down. And then I had a very minute white light going to the center of it and then going back into a camera. And the idea was to make something called a Schlerin optical system. And what it does is it measures temperature density changes in the air. So if you put a lighter or something with heat on it, you're not going to see the glowing here. What you're going to see is the steam rising. You ever see on a summer day the hot road where you see the distortion of the image from the road's heat? Mm-hmm. That's what this thing was. So that's my involvement in the mirror concept, is making that device. And it's pretty unique and it's hard to set up, but we did bring it to that shoot and we did capture something, so it was well worth it.
So, Robert, what do you think so far in all of your years, what is the best evidence that you guys have captured?
Well, let's see. That senior home, the EVPs were really incredible. What my son saw was incredible. What we brought home was incredible. We were at a residence of a gentleman who's interesting. His name is, he calls himself Trump. But he has nothing to do with Trump. He was long before Trump even ran or was around. But and we brought a ghost box to his home because he had something that was just driving him crazy. And I'm not a big believer in the ghost box. In some ways, I am. In some ways, I'm not. You have to be careful how you use it. And we got the best ghost box evidence ever that I've ever gotten on any investigation there. In fact, I sent the evidence to the inventor of the ghost box, Gary Gelka, and he has it on his website. He said that was one of the best evidence that he's ever seen for his ghost box design, the PSP-7, which is a great device. So that was something really unique, was those answers that we got that day on that ghost box. And we've gotten EVPs that are really unique. You know, that same building where the slaves burned through that tunnel, I was in the basement with my wife and two investigators, my son, and I was asking questions, and I said, "It's time for us to go, and if you communicated, that's great." And then everybody was totally quiet, and I was totally silent. I was touching the wall, and you hear this EVP of an African-American person saying, "It's time to flee."
Mm.
Yeah, that was so strange because nobody heard it. You know, 5 witnesses right there didn't hear it, and yet on that recorder was, "It's time to flee." So that was really interesting to get something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's sad to think about some of these folks or their energy or spirits stuck in bad times, or a kid left behind, you know, asking for their mother, whatever it might be. It's quite sad.
Yeah, it is. Because, you know, when you think about how strange it is to get anything recorded like that, I have been recording my voice. I like to sing, and since I was 14 years old. And I don't know, I think I'm 58 right now. I can't remember. And that's a long time to be recording. I've had reel-to-reel recorders. I had the first digital recorder. My brother had a studio for many years, so we're into audio. And out of all these audio recordings that I have on my computer that have been digitized, and all the recordings my brother Stephen has made, both of us have never gotten something that wasn't put into the microphone as an acoustic wave from our voice, or from an instrument, or from a synthesizer. So for us as a group in 5 years to capture any kind of phenomena, to me, statistically, is amazing. You know, to hear a voice on a recorder when nobody is saying anything, or even to hear a garbled voice, it shouldn't be there. I know from experience, out of all these years of recording, I've never heard any phenomena like that on any of my voice recordings, you know, unless I'm in a location that is active.
Right.
So to me, that really says something about the validity of whatever is trying to communicate through a ghost box or a digital recorder or a tape recorder. Something is unique going on, just from my experience from an engineering and audio technical point of view.
Yeah, considering all the homes in just the United States alone, the minuscule amount that are actually haunted, right?
Right, exactly. And that's why hopefully you get calls and you get involved with businesses or families that do have something going on. Sometimes you can debunk a lot of it. Other times there's some activity. You know, I was at a house in a town in Naperville that I used to live, and a friend of my wife's called me and said they've got these little bursts of light throughout their house, and something's going on, and they don't know what to do. So that was the time that I first brought the prototype of one of the things I mentioned to you, the paraselfie. You know, a device that allows entities to show off who they are, essentially, make a selfie of themselves. And we captured something unusual in there, and the frustrating thing is that I was, you know, debunking and questioning a lot of this stuff about these little light things they're seeing. And of course, I didn't capture anything. But on the end part of the investigation, I was talking to them, and all of a sudden, I see this little ball of light go and move and disappear into the ceiling.
Mm.
And I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. So here I am thinking, you know, these people are out of it, or they're not seeing something. All of a sudden I see it right in front of me. Of course, no camera was running, and I couldn't capture it, but it's one of those things. You never can capture the things you want because you have to have them running 24/7.
So what else could that be of our known normal world? Could that be anything?
You know, who knows? It's like why would something happen that would make a visual phenomena like that to these people in this home?
Right.
And they had a little girl that I forget her name. She was adorable, and she, for some reason, opened the door and walked out of the house
Mm.
and panicked everybody and walked down by a river area.
Oh.
And that was the scariest thing I ever heard of. So you wonder what would motivate this little girl to do that. And that's another thing that happened paranormal. I consider that paranormal.
Yeah, that,
you know, so
that just
terrible.
That just makes my mind jump to the missing 411 people found in or around water. That's very strange.
Right. What's the connection of water?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Limestone.
Uh-huh. Robert, I want to back you up just for a second, and this is more for me than it's just a random question. You mentioned the name Galka. Is that the same Galka family that lost their daughter?
Yes, it is.
He was the one that came up with that device?
Yeah, he's the inventor of the PSP-7 Ghost Box.
So he came up with that to talk to his daughter.
Yes, he did. And he also Mel meter. And it's called Mel because his daughter was named Mel.
Yeah, see, that breaks my heart. That really does.
And he's an interesting guy. He's an engineer, and he was skeptical, and he started developing equipment to his daughter. And he's been on TV and Ghost Adventures many times. And now he's kind of, you know, a little more secluded, and he still develops things. But he's gotten so much education to his daughter. There's just videos he's posted that are just amazing of orbs in the room. You know, I've just seen some incredible stuff he's developed, shown in videos. But yeah, that is the Gary Galka that I'm referring to.
Okay, I caught that in a second. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's the same gentleman, because that was one story that you just don't forget, especially when you have kids. It just kind of tugs at the old heartstrings. Yeah,
it is. They had an episode on Ghost Adventures about that. It was kind of sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not a good thing to happen to anybody. And you know, he wasn't the most spiritual person. He was kind of like me. But then after that, after the communications he was getting, he really changed his life. So.
But he feels comforted by the fact that his daughter is still around, or he wants her to move on. Like, I wonder how he feels about that.
No, his feeling, from what I understand from talking with him, we had a conversation, several conversations. I mean, I spoke with him on the phone for hours, and his feeling, at least back then, this was a couple of years ago, was that he wants her to be around. He celebrates her birthday every year, and he celebrates all these different events throughout the year, and he goes in his bedroom and he communicates to her and set up the infrared camera. And you know, I think he doesn't want her to move on because I think he feels she's in a safe, good place where she's at, and he can communicate with her. You know, so
yeah,
that's my opinion.
Okay, so I want to go back to the paraselfie because I want to talk about that more, but I want to tie that in at the end after my next question with you and Art going to what is now called Hideaway 64. But I want to ask before we get to that, what is your favorite device that you have made so far?
Probably the paraselfie.
Is it?
It used to be the Parashadow, but now I think the paraselfie is probably the most unique device right now.
Well, yeah, let's go ahead and jump into that thing then. So I'm sure you took a number of pieces of equipment into this location, but this was Al Capone's previous speakeasy and hideout, and this is in St. Charles, Illinois. Am I correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and was it just you and Art on that investigation?
Yes, initially it was the owners of the building and a couple of their friends, but they kind of got scared and they all left. So it's just
Oh my goodness. They got scared? What happened?
Well, I think they just didn't want to be there at some point.
Now that was during, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was watching the video and it looked like it was in the midst of a huge renovation, right? And that's when you had the two brothers, the Casiellos, right? The two brothers are there and they're talking. So something happened during the day, during that interview that freaked them out?
Nothing really happened during the interview. It's just some of the experiences they had there. I think they felt that we were going to bring something out.
Okay.
And they just didn't want to. And, you know, I'll tell you something that's really peculiar is after we investigated, I don't know what the status is of that construction, but I can't get any communication to them. They don't respond. And my brother-in-law knows one of the persons there, and he is not responding either. So I hope nothing happened to them. You know, maybe we opened up some portal or something, but I don't know. It was an interesting place, and it was a little scary, a little creepy. I don't know if the video, sets that up properly, but that was the first time we used the paraselfie with the Capone pictures in front of it. And of course, we didn't capture anything with the paraselfie. It ran for a long time. We did capture some ghost box responses and some EVPs of some really strange sounds like gunfire and things like that, and some voices. But I've since revamped and redesigned the paraselfie to be more accurate and to show more visually the sensors and to transmit, what you're seeing easier. So the next time we use it, it's going to be it's paraselfie 2.0. So.
No, I think the video sets it up fantastic, and I'm going to link it in the show notes, of course, so everyone can check that out and find your channel. But yeah, you had that paraselfie set up. It was on the second floor, right, with all the pictures of Capone and his friends or family or whatever.
Yes.
And
yes,
that whole ending where you're like, well, hey, if you don't want us here, then you can just tell us to leave. And from the sounds of it, you got told to leave.
Yes. Right, the ghost box said leave, and we weren't getting any other words, and I had the antenna collapsed, so it wasn't like a radio station, and yeah, it said leave, so we were leaving at that point too. So, it was almost like they were fed up at that point. It was like they're not going to really communicate too much, but then it's like, once you get the hell out of here, leave, So that was pretty neat.
Was that after most of the night you had been there, or...?
Yeah, that was right towards the end. That was after we had walked around with the infrared cameras, and it was right at the end. So we packed up and we left at that point.
What's your feelings on, because seeing the place ripped up, I'm sure that it didn't look like that before the Casiellos purchased that and are going to turn it into this new restaurant. Well, hopefully, right? You haven't heard from them. What are your thoughts on, if you renovate and start tearing up a location that's already haunted, that activity can ramp up from there?
I haven't experienced that because I've never, owned a piece of property that was haunted. It kind of makes sense to me. And they did experience, as you see in the video, they talked about the window cracking. They talked about the door being blown out from the inside and nothing being stolen, and they had all his equipment and things there. So that happened right exactly when they started to knock the walls down. It was literally that same evening that they went back the next day. So, I think there is something to that. And if entities are real and they're at a location and all of a sudden you start changing things. I mean, think about that. It's kind of like, think about where you grew up. Like I grew up in Chicago, and you always think about the first place you grew up at. And you always want to remember it the way it was. So you drive by and you see that they knocked it down, or that now it's a pizza shop or something. You get a little frustrated. It's like you get a little mad. It's like, why didn't they leave that alone? So it's the same thing. If they're hanging around and they see that something's happening, or maybe they don't even see it. Maybe they sense it. Maybe they work on vibration. They work on magnetic fields, using a power tool. So you're generating terrible EMF. You're using a hammer hitting metal and hitting nails, and that generates pulses of EMF. Who knows? Maybe they're hearing that like a terrible sound in their ear, and that's how they know something's going on. And then they just kind of build up their energy and try and interact with you doing that construction. And the way I feel, if these are real, again, I don't know. Nobody knows at this point. But if they are, it makes sense they would be upset. And the way I look at it is they have a very minimal opportunity to interact. It's almost like they've got these little windows of opportunity that might happen randomly or might happen in peaks. And so they're frustrated with the construction, and then they get this peak going out, and then they do something, or they move something, or they have an EVP or some other phenomenon like that. But it just makes sense from a human point of view that it would happen.
So, Robert, in all your years of research and doing the videos and building all of this very sensitive equipment for your own eyes, have you thought about your perfect sighting to where you're like, well, that was a ghost, or that was an entity, or, I mean, have you thought about that, and what would be a validation for you for your own eyes and not using the equipment?
Well, if I was able to capture a full shadow figure on the para channel, that would be excellent. So far, we've caught movement and a couple frames. When you analyze the frames, you see a person in there that matches the person that was dead at this location. And that's pretty impressive.
Is this at the, I'm sorry to interrupt, is that at the senior home?
No, that was at the Ghost Asylum shoot for the one upper second floor where we had the parashadow, and the team was walking around asking questions. And there was a couple of seconds of video where something moved across the parashadow, like it's supposed to, and it detected an energy density change in the air. And if you looked at the frames, you saw a couple frames of two people standing there, and one of them had a hat on, and it looked just like the person that got decapitated in the elevator there. If I caught something, moving that was so clear on the parashadow, that'd be great. If the paraselfie caught Capone, his face or something, or if I bring it somewhere else and I capture something with those strobing lights that nobody could dispute is not supposed to be there, that would be the holy grail for Vparanormal.
I tell you what, that paraselfie, I watched that entire video that you sent me describing it. That thing is cool. That has all sorts of bells and whistles. How many times have you guys gotten that out in the field?
Let's see, 2 times so far. And now it's 2.0, so we got to bring it somewhere.
Yeah.
We have a place locally that is an old, really, really old historic building, and they're having paranormal activity, and hoping to bring it there and have some video on that in the next couple of months. What gave me the idea is, for the paraselfie, is that everybody says they see entities or see shadows, and that's why I built the para channel. But I thought to myself, if entities are real and they are people, that we're people, maybe they're vain like people are, all this cell phone sticking at people's face taking pictures. I thought, how are we going to attract them to go in front of this? And that's why it has a camera, and anything that goes in front of it, it records, and it transmits the image to a monitor. And it's a real simple concept that if something is moving really fast, if you have a car going by really fast, or you have a bug flying by really fast, if you have a strobe light going, you're going to capture and stop the motion. Everybody knows they've been to a dance floor and they see a strobe going, and all of a sudden you see everybody stop for a fraction of a second. Well, imagine if those are all entities and you attracted them to come to this camera, and then you give them the kind of light that they want, and you strobe that. That's the whole concept, is to capture them as they see themselves. Because if they do go in front of it, there's a monitor there. There's an HD monitor, and that monitor will show them what they look like. Maybe they won't like it. Maybe they will. I don't know. So that was the whole concept, is to get them to go in front of this, be a little vain, and to strobe a whole balanced amount of light of all the different wavelengths that we know of is blasted at them, so that to attract them and to capture them. Because I know I don't know what they're made of, and I don't know what wavelength of light would attract them. So I basically put every type of light known that we know of on that unit. And hopefully one day I'll have some evidence using that will show that something got attracted to go in front of there, and whether it be a shadow, whether it be a face, that would be like the holy grail for me to have that happen.
Well, Robert, you know what cemented the idea for me? Like, I was watching the video, and I'm like, that is so cool. Like you said, it has all the different lights on there, but you had the shop fan out, and one of the blades, there's 3 blades. I believe it's 3, not 4. But one of the blades is painted white, and the other ones are black or dark color. And you get the fan going, and then you turn the paraselfie on, and it literally isolates the white blade as if it's not moving. And you're going, okay, I get that, because if an entity or a ghost or a spirit, whatever you want to call them, they're supposed to move so fast, right? But if it goes in front of the paraselfie, it will slow it down, and you can actually capture the thing. That's what cemented it for me. So I think that the shot fan example was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you hit it right on the head. That was what I was trying to demonstrate. And you're seeing the white light hitting that white fan blade. But what's not shown in the video is that not only is there white light, but there's infrared light, there's ultraviolet light, there's a special red light that's used to heal wounds, and all those things are also strobing at the same rate that captured that fan blade. So because I don't have a clue what they're made out of, if they even exist, what their entity is made out of, I kind of made the strobing effect of all those different light types. But you're right, the fan blade hits it on the head. It shows that if it's moving fast, we're going to be able to capture it. And of course, if they wanted to stay there and not move around, it would capture that too. They don't have to just whiz by it. But it almost seems to me, Shannon, that however they operate, the mechanics of them, it's probably electromagnetic fields, and they have to move really fast. They don't stand still. So that was the whole concept, is to try and stroboscope them so that we capture something in front of that camera. And maybe if they can even see, which I don't know, they can look at that monitor and see what they look like. And that's why we call it the paraselfie.
Yeah, that thing is like an assault. I really do think if something got in front of that finally you would really have some incredible evidence that I think people would have a hard time debunking. Even Stephen and your father-in-law there, right?
Yeah, yes, I think they would, especially because they understand, what it's doing.
Yeah. And
I can't fool it. It's all real time. And if that thing is set up, that's why I was a little disappointed at the Capone restaurant. Is I was really hoping to aggravate Capone if he was there or anybody to just go in front of that. What I really wanted to happen, I wanted the pictures to be knocked down, and I wanted to see something go in front of it and knock the picture down. And I made sure that they were really solid on the easels and everything, so not to be fooled. But that was my goal. We were in another room, is to taunt them and have that happen. Because Capone had a short temper, and it was real easy to get him mad. You call him Shorty, and you get a bullet in your head. So,
right. It's such a shot in the dark, and I didn't mean to tie that into Capone's thing, but it's such a shot in the dark because you don't know where to set that up exactly, right? Like, where was his favorite place in the restaurant or speakeasy? Where was where did he chop people's hands off, or whatever he did in the place? I don't know. it's all a guessing game. And like you said, we just don't know. And I like the fact that you don't say, hey, I'm an expert on this stuff and I know exactly what's going on, because there just are no experts.
There's absolutely no expert in the paranormal field. You know, I loosely call myself a paranormal engineer, and I can get away with that because my background, I do have degrees in engineering, but nobody knows anything to be considered a professional in this field. I certainly am not. And I'm searching for the answers, and I'm searching for the holy grail of evidence that will show that, you know, there is something going on. And, you know, like my father-in-law Walter says, he goes, call me when you really capture something, and we'll make sure you get the Nobel Prize, you know.
Right.
You know, saying it sarcastically because he knows you're never going to catch anything because it's all not real, you know.
I mean, never say never, but it's tough, right?
Yeah, it is. You could, you know, I've done this for 5-6 years now, and I've gotten really great evidence.
Mm-hmm.
But with the kind of equipment I've developed, I should be getting more evidence, and maybe I just have to get to the right place in the right moment. And, you know, another thing is I probably need to leave in a location this equipment where we're not there, because people leave it and just have pre-recorded questions or just leave it going and see if you get something. Because, you know, who knows if we annoy entities, you know, constantly asking questions, get the same questions over and over again, bringing the same equipment. And so it would be interesting to leave this, and I'm going to try and do that in the next investigation, to leave it all through the night by itself and have the cameras going and to see if we capture something that way.
You know what? That's a really good thought, because even in some of the Ghost Adventures episodes, they're like, Zach will be talking to some kid that was trespassing on asylum property, and he happens to look up at a window and sees a full figure apparition, right? And it's moving. So,
right.
I mean, was it there for him? Who knows? We could speculate, but that's a really great idea, Rob, is just leave it there and see what comes across at night when no one's there asking questions or poking at anything.
Right, because if they're curious, if they exist, first of all, we don't know. And if they're curious in some form and not afraid of the equipment, you know, when you're there prompting them, and they always, you know, my son Stephen always says to me, he's like, you talk too much. You say too many technical things. Can't you just say, come and talk to us, to them? Why do you got to say, come by this device and impart your electromagnetic energy, you know? Because I can't help it. I always think in terms of what they are in my mind. But the reality is that you could talk to them as people. And but I don't necessarily think that they hear our voice. And a lot of times I question that. And that's why I invented something called the Paratalk. And it's another device that you'll see me wearing around my neck. And the Ghost Asylum crew, Tennessee Ray Chasers, they had that around their neck too. And that's a device that converts anybody's voice into an electromagnetic signal and to a FM radio signal too. You know, because I'm not convinced that they hear what's going on. I think that they get little bursts, they get little EMS things. But I don't think they hear us unless we communicate in some form that's what their energy is made out of. And that's another thing is, you know, when I'm asking all these questions, maybe I'm overloading them, and that's by putting the equipment there overnight. Might be a way to entice them to go near something, because then I wouldn't be there bugging them or making them think that I'm going to trap them or something. You know, for all we know, they think I'm developing traps.
Yeah, they might think it's Ghostbusters, right? We're just sliding that thing in there. They're like, oh, no, I know what that is. I'm not going over there.
Right, I saw the movie. Yeah, I saw the movie. Yeah.
I know what happened to Slimer.
Yeah, right. Oh, God.
Well, let's make it clear that for you guys at Vparanormal, you guys don't charge a fee. If someone calls you and they need help, they got something going on at their home or office or a property they bought, that you guys don't charge a fee, but you just go out there and investigate and see what's going on and try to help them. Right.
That's exactly true. And the only thing that we usually have the client sign is paperwork that says if something gets damaged, we're not really liable for that, and also that we would publish a video usually about the investigation. So we don't like to keep things private. A lot of groups do private things where you don't even know that they investigated. We like to put the investigation out there and show whether we captured anything or even if we didn't capture anything. And that's just the way we've been from the start. So that's something we do is we show it. We don't say the people's last name. We don't say the location, the address, but we do have the investigation shown so that we can keep research going on this so that people can see what we're doing. And that's another reason why I mentioned to you, Shannon, that I try and show on my videos how to build these devices. The Para Shadow is quite complex, yet I had a whole video about it. And I have electronics in some of these videos where I show the schematic, and I show how to build it. I'm working on something right now that is going to be another breakthrough, and I'm going to have the complete way to build it because I want to advance the paranormal. I'm not here to make money on anybody. I want to advance this field, and I would be just as happy if another paranormal investigator built something I developed and captured something and was on the news. That would be fine with me.
Yeah, and I'll let everyone in on a little email tidbit that Robert and I had back and forth because it was one of the initial questions I had for you. I was like, well, I want to make sure I cover where you buy your devices and how you buy them. And you're like, no, I don't sell them, but I teach people how to build them. And I think that's so fantastic that you do that.
Thanks. I don't know if anybody ever builds them, and my brother Steve always looks at these videos. He's like, "Who are you talking to? There's like 3 people that are going to do this in the world." But because I'm kind of a nerdy. We're all nerds in this team, and I understand that. But some of the things I've developed, you could pay an engineer to build them. And it would be less money than what you could buy, and it would be more unique than what you could buy.
Right.
So, the thing I'm working on right now is, other than the Paraselfie, is there's all these ghost boxes out there on the market, and the PSP7 is the most well-known one that Gary Gelka developed. But you'll notice there's all these new fancy ghost boxes that are appearing on these television shows, where you see all these lights blinking, and you hear all this reverb, and it sounds really scary. Well, I'm kind of debunking a lot of that because I know the way that what they're doing. So I'm working on a simple circuit, and I'm going to make a video, and it's going to allow people to use 2 of the most common things that they have in their kits, their paranormal kit, and that is the PSP7 Ghost Box and the K2 meter. Just about every paranormal group out of the 20,000 in the United States, they all have those 2 pieces of equipment. Well, I'm going to show a way to use those 2 pieces of equipment along with a little Bluetooth boombox, and everybody has those too, the little Bluetooth amplifiers. And with my little circuit, which I'm going to show, I'm going to make one of these sophisticated ghost box that doesn't have all the lights and the reverb, but what it'll do will be pretty phenomenal. So that's the latest thing I'm working on right now. But again, I'm going to share that information for the public and anybody interested, how to build it, and they can go and build this thing probably for about $12. And these ghost boxes that I'm referring to that are on shows like not Paranormal State, the show that Nick Roth is on, I can't remember what it's called, Paranormal Lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
These are $2,000 for these ghost boxes.
Wow.
So $2,000 is a lot of money to spend on something that has an echo chamber in it.
Yeah.
So, you asked me in the beginning what got me motivated to get involved with paranormal. It was being a little bit frustrated with some of the equipment I was seeing and how it was being used and abused. So I'm still motivated by that. So when I see something, I try and, rectify the problem by developing something that could possibly work and then publicly showing how to do it.
Yeah, we are not all engineers, so it's very cool that you're doing that, Robert. I mean, I'm going, once I found that out, once I read that email, I'm like, you're gonna show me how to make this? I mean, I'm gonna say some 4-letter words along the way, I'm sure, but I'm gonna try. That's how I felt.
No, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it's, and I've had people make them. I mean, it's not like it hasn't happened. I even had a couple celebrities, ghost hunter celebrities, I don't want to mention who they were, but contact me and building some of my devices. And they've had questions, and I've privately answered them, and because they wanted to build something. And you know, the first thing I always get, just like you had asked me, Shannon, you said, is this for sale? I do get that question a lot, and I say, sorry, I don't sell anything. You know, once you start selling something, the whole concept of what I do just kind of gets trashed. I mean, I don't want to sell anything. I'm trying to forward this field.
That says a lot about you, though.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, please let everyone know every single place that they can find you and Vparanormal.
Probably easiest would be to go to vparanormal.com, and there it has a lot of the information about what we do. It has links to most of the investigations, and if you want to get some of the current pieces of equipment, just do a search on YouTube for Vparanormal 1. It's just the word Vparanormal with the number 1 at the end, because Vparanormal wasn't available. But if you do a search, it'll come up with my channel, and you'll see all the latest devices. You'll see the Parashadow. You'll see the Paraselfie, just like you did, the 2 videos there, and you'll see this upcoming video. I haven't named it yet for this device. It would be the specialized ghost box. And other investigation videos around it too that haven't made it to the website yet. So that's primarily it. And we have a Twitter. I can't remember what my Twitter name is, but if you do a search for Vparanormal, it'll come up on Twitter also. And you can reach us. There's info at vparanormal.com, or you can call us at 630-553-8697. And you could let us know if you need an investigation done, if you need any help with something. We'll be glad to help.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for doing this. This was a blast, and I'll have to send you pictures along the way of whatever I decide to build. It'll have to be something a little more simple to start, I'm sure.
Okay, that's no problem. Call me anytime. I can work with you on it.
Well, thank you, Robert.
No problem.
Yeah, and we'll do this again. I know you guys are going to be going on more investigations, so we'll do update shows with you.
Okay, no problem. You have a nice night, Shannon.
Thank you, you too.